Hello everyone, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Lenovo Legion 5 gaming laptop. Now this particular model sports a Ryzen 7 5800H. It is a Zen 3 CPU and it supports an RTX 3060. So as you can see, this is the Phantom Blue version that we've gone for here, and overall it's a pretty nice little one. 15.6 inches. Pretty nice as well. You've got here USB port on the side here, along with some vents. Most of the I/O is at the rear, which I particularly like. You see, you've got a big exhaust vents at the rear, and you've got a LAN port, a USB Type C, which is display port, three USB ports, charger, HDMI, and on this side you've got another Type C as well as a headphone and microphone jack. But overall, it's a nice looking laptop. It's called Phantom Blue, and it's pretty decent. It had 8 gigs of RAM, which it came with, which isn't a big deal for some people. If you're prepared to take this laptop apart and upgrade it, which I have done. I mean, it was quite an easy upgrade. You've got the keyboard light. Doesn't have RGB lighting. I don't know if you can see it very well in there, but that's what the screen looks like. Again, it is nice. 120 hertz, 1080p screen. Not the best, but the response time is reasonable. So what we're going to do now is we will check out some games. You can see the Radeon graphics and RTX. That's how the screen is. It's okay. It's not the thinnest of laptops, but I do like it. I like most of the I/O at the back. Again, it's good for cable management. And you've also got the different modes as well that we'll talk about. You press FN and Q for the different modes. It also has a mux switch as well, so you don't have to use Nvidia Optimus. So it will use the Radeon integrated graphics, or you can use the dedicated Nvidia graphics. But let's get into some games and we'll see what's what with this laptop. Right, so let's start off with Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Quite an older game now from 2019, but still quite a taxing game now. We're running the benchmark here, 1080p, ultra settings, and as you can see, that RTX 3060 is the full fat 130 watt version. You can see here it is being pushed to its limit, and the performance is pretty good. Mostly GPU bound here. You can see CPU temperatures are getting up. That's getting up infernal laptop temperatures. Not the highest temperatures that we'll see here, but yeah, Shadow of the Tomb Raider is perfectly playable. We're averaging in triple digits, which is nice for us. Not too bad. Bear in mind the RTX 3060 laptop GPU does differ from the desktop variant. Again, lower TDP being one of them. And not all RTX 3060s are created equal. Some of them are around 80 to, but I think it's between 80 and 130. So this has a top of the line 130 watt TDP GPU, and as you can see, it is pushing pretty hard. This village section here is more CPU intensive. You can see the CPU usage increasing as the GPU usage decreases, as it has to load in all of the NPCs and do all of their animations and AI, etc. This bit is a little bit more taxing on the CPU, as you can see here. The frame rate does drop. There's a lot of draw calls going on here. But it is still perfectly playable. This is kind of a worst case scenario for Shadow of the Tomb Raider. But again, reasonably impressive. Again, you can see the RAM usage that we upgraded. It is something I would recommend. Upgrade the RAM from 8 gigabytes to 16. It's quite easily done. And the RAM upgrade is cheap as well, because the laptop was only £900, and the RAM was £25 for an 8 gig DDR4 module. So as you can see here, also added a second SSD. So we'll just get the benchmark results here for Shadow of the Tomb Raider. 101 FPS average on mostly ultra settings. No ray tracing. Ray tracing was off for the ray trace shadows. You can turn them on. It does lower the frame rate a bit, but I would honestly just turn them off and go with ultra settings. So anyway, there we go. That was Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Let's go check out something else now. Right, so let's go and check out Elden Ring then, something a bit more modern. Again, runs reasonably well. Took a screenshot there on Steam. Yeah, so fine. 1080p again and maximum settings. We're in the open world. It does dip. You can see the frame rate dipping slightly below. It dips into the 50s. Lowering the graphics settings, we probably get a better result. We should point out again that again the laptop RTX 3060 only has 6 gigs of VRAM as opposed to the desktop's 12 gigs. There's the tree sentinel. I ain't gonna fight him. This dude's telling us that we're maidenless. So when you get later on in the game and get your mount, it does dip below 60. Right, so I've skipped ahead to where we get our mount, and this part is quite a taxing part. There's a lot going on here when you run up this part of the game. And as you can see, this is kind of a worst case scenario for the game. You get the big thing that jumps in, just jumped in behind us. And you can see here, frame rate drops below 60. I would say drop the settings down to high to get a guaranteed 60 FPS. But yeah, riding around the open world in your mount. I didn't play this for very long because it doesn't work on my main gaming PC. To be honest, I did create a character and played it for a few hours on that, so we're not very far into the game. Because one of the updates, it just refused to boot. Although on this PC it does work. Although I have tried Elden Ring on 3 PCs now. I haven't tried it on the Steam Deck yet. I will try it on the Steam Deck. Apparently works quite well on the Steam Deck. But yeah, so 3 PCs, 2 of them don't work. The gaming laptop handily works. So that's quite nice. Once again, the system RAM. VRAM's okay. It's using less than half of the video memory there, and it is using over 8 gigs of system RAM. Again, so yeah, it's pretty reasonable, the performance in Elden Ring. We haven't got very far in it, so let's try out some ray tracing now, seeing as we've got an RTX 3060. Right, so we're starting off our ray tracing look with a look at Quake 2 RTX. Again, this is 1080p, the native resolution of the screen, max settings, and yeah, it runs pretty well, actually. It's much better than my 2070 Super. That was running at 1440p though, and that struggled to hit 30 FPS. So Ampere is pretty nice in terms of the path traced Quake 2. Not very taxing on the CPU, as you can see, but fully utilizing that GPU, and it's getting up to the full 131 watts there we were touching in the power draw there. So it is pushing that GPU to its limit. Again, there's not much really for the CPU to do. Quake 2 is a game from 1997, and this is just the path traced version of Quake 2. We did look at a few later levels. The RTX 3080 Ti that I have in my main gaming PC, that does run it 1440p, and it gets about 90 FPS, but its little baby brother, the RTX 3060, its baby brother, as it's the laptop variant, of course, and not the same as the desktop variant of the the RTX 3060. But yeah, above 60 FPS, and it stays there most of the time. Just slightly above 60, and that is perfectly playable. Again, I'll maybe need to test the RTX 2070 Super versus the 3060 laptop CPU. It'd be interesting to see generation to generation, Pascal to, or not Pascal, what was it again? What was the 20 series called? Pascal was the 10 series. What was the 20 series called again? Ampere is the 30 series. Turing, that was it. Turing was the 20 series. So Turing versus Ampere, it'd be interesting to see a comparison at 1080p between that. But yeah, I really like Quake 2 RTX. It runs very, very impressively here. As you can see, you're getting the ray trace, the path tracing, so everything is ray traced. It's not a mixture of hybrid rendering. Most games are sort of rasterization with some ray traced elements, whereas this whole game is ray traced. So yeah, pretty good and pretty impressive turn in from Quake 2. Alright, next up is Control Ultimate Edition, which has this weird issue. You saw the texture there. See, in photo mode, it's the correct texture, and the texture just seems to bug out and load up the low res version. As you can see there, the shelter. See, it's back to normal when we exited photo mode, and the frame rate is fine. This is 1080p medium settings with ray tracing enabled. Ray tracing on medium, so just ray traced reflections that we're running. But you can see here, it's got the high res version of the texture coming in, and then all of a sudden it'll just bug out. Watch as we go into this room here, and we'll show you the wall, the wooden wall texture at the end here. You see, look, it's got the low res version. The high res version hasn't loaded. Yeah, it's a bit of a strange bug with the game. It seems to be a known issue though. Look, there's the high res version. You can see the frame rate spiking, and then we go back to the game, and then the high res version's loaded. Bit weird there. A bit of a strange issue, but other than that, runs fine. You can go with ultra settings and no ray tracing. You can put DLSS on if you want. I find that like medium settings is fine for this grade of hardware. Again, really pushing that. Again, look at that. It's done it again with the texture bug there. But apparently this is a known issue with the game, and there is fixes that you can employ with that. So you can see we've got ray traced reflections. You can see Jesse's reflection in the glass there, and again the texture bug is in play. I don't think we can get it out. See, going into photo mode, going out of photo mode seems to get out. You can see here, you can still see Jesse's reflection there, and again the table, the texture there for the wooden table isn't right. There's some of the high res textures have loaded in for the wall, but not the fire extinguisher there. Again, bit of a strange bug. Doesn't do that on the PC. I don't think it's VRAM related, maybe. I mean, it's using 5 gigabytes of VRAM. We can go zoom in here. You can see here that the seek shelter thing, oh no, that's gone now. See, it just seems to weirdly flicker in and out. I don't think it's a VRAM issue, though. Because we're using under the 6 gigs of VRAM. Maybe it is. Maybe we need to lower some settings. But again, not really experienced the bug there. Because you can see here, if we go, well, that's still gone as well, the shelter. Texture is still gone, but some of them are high res, some of them are low res. I don't get it. Really, the seek shelter alarm there is fine, but the ray tracing works fine. Everything's working fine. Anyway, we'll move on to something else now. Right, so Doom Eternal then, and this is where we start to see our first real issue. We've got ray tracing on, and we've got DLSS enabled as well. We can't run Ultra Nightmare settings because we don't have enough VRAM. Having 6 gigs of VRAM is just not enough for Ultra Nightmare settings. And you can see the frame rate is dipping below 60. The solution is simple, just turn ray tracing off, and that will again fix everything, because I think ray tracing is just a bit too much for the RTX 3060. If you're happy with it dipping into the 50s, then you know it's fine, and you're okay with this frame rate. You can see here when the action heats up, it's fine when there's not a lot on screen, but Super Gore Nest is a good test for the system. As you can see, that CPU temperature getting up to inferno levels. The good thing about Doom Eternal on a gaming laptop is it's quite realistic, because you can really feel the fires of hell. I mean, look at that CPU. It's up in the 80s now. It does get to the 90s later on in this level when you get to the bigger area. This is just a smaller little area of combat here in Super Gore Nest. Using infinite ammo because I like the super shotgun as well. But yeah, you can see here that the inferno is real. You know, it is the fires of hell. You get to experience through your fingertips, and that again just makes it way more realistic. I'm not doing very well here. I'm just kind of I'm too distracted by the frame rate. That is the problem. So we'll take a look at some more problematic games. Let's take a look at some more high demand PC games. I think we'll look at God of War, Dad of the Boy on the PC. Right, so here we are in Dad of Boy Simulator at ultra settings at 1080p, and it has issues hitting 60 FPS. You do get a VRAM warning when you do this, that the 6 gigs might not be enough, and as you can see, it does have dips below 60 FPS at ultra settings. Now, this can be remedied. I'm not doing very well against the first major sort of boss in the game. I haven't really played God of War that much on the PC, to be honest. Not doing very well. I'm distracted by the low frame rate, to be honest. Dipping below 60 FPS. But what you can do is you can drop all of the settings to high. DLSS is another option, but I don't like DLSS at 1080p. I'd rather drop the settings. Okay, so if you drop a few of the settings off of ultra to high, as you can see, we're running resolution scaling is off. We've gone for borderless window. I think is the only other option that we've got. DLSS is off, and you've got also fidelity, FX, super resolution, FSR as well. So dropping some of the settings to high, and I don't think we should have hit continue game because we should have just loaded up a save. The other save we should. Okay, so I loaded up the save again with the boss, and as you can see at high settings, the game still looks good, but you can see we're now below that sort of VRAM threshold. We're running only 4 gigs of VRAM as opposed to we went to 5, getting close to 6. We're also using less system RAM as well, but as you can see, the frame rate is a lot better. Again, DLSS is an option if you want to run ultra settings with DLSS. Lowering the resolution will, of course, lower the VRAM usage as well. But again, 1080p is quite a low resolution to run DLSS at. DLSS tends to do better at higher resolutions just because the AI has more data to scale from. So I honestly prefer 60 or the above 60 FPS, and again running it with high settings rather than ultra. Some of the things we've left on ultra, we just lowered a few settings to high, so you're still getting better than the PlayStation 5 version of the game, which just runs the PS4 Pro settings, but you're getting a, again, higher frame rate. Again, this monitor, this laptop screen supports 120 hertz, so you know, and I don't know if it has VRR support. I didn't look into that. But yeah, so we can get above 60 FPS. As you can see, boy is stabbing away at the giant dude. So let's go. What we'll do now is we'll take a look at a game that's just not well optimized for PC. We'll take a look at Halo Infinite, shall we? Okay, Halo Infinite's campaign, very taxing on the system. Once again, I tried it on ultra settings, and once again, it does not have enough VRAM. So dropping the settings to high, still gets dips below 60. Again, this is very, very system intensive, CPU and GPU. We're mostly GPU bound here. As you can see, GPU usage in the 90s, CPU usage in the 60s. But yeah, this is not a good PC port. I mean, it doesn't run well for how it looks, to be honest. And high settings is okay. We're just doing combat here in the open world and a base here, just to show you that you can get dips into the 50s. Occasionally, you're getting, you know, above 70, 60, 70 FPS here. You can see it down. We got dips down into 59. It's not very stable, the frame rate here, but again, it's not too bad. It's not too bad at all. This is 1080p, of course. We tried ultra settings, but again, the 6 gigs just wasn't enough. You can see the VRAM usage is above 5 gigabytes here. Did get an achievement. Throw 50 fusion cells. That was nice there. That was nice of us. But yeah, just going around in the open world, killing enemies. It's fine here. There's no enemies around. It's okay. You know, you're saying you're getting above, you know, above 60 FPS. But yeah, Halo Infinite, the multiplayer is better than this. You should get between 80 and 100 FPS in the multiplayer because they're smaller arenas. This isn't an open world. Less taxing on the CPU, pushes the GPU a bit more. But yeah, Halo Infinite, not a good PC port. But overall, the Lenovo Legion 5 is a very good PC. I like the screen. The screen is pretty decent. I've owned Lenovo ThinkPads in the past, and their screens were terrible. 900p screens that were really horrible. So this 1080p, it's not a lot of other models of this laptop come with 144, 165 hertz screens. This one came with a 120 hertz, and honestly, for the class of hardware that it has, it's okay. You maybe want 144, 165 hertz if you're playing more competitive games, you know, something like CSGO or Fortnite or something like that, which can run well above, you know, 120 hertz. I didn't try CSGO on this, because normally we use CSGO for our sort of low-end machines, and I don't play competitive games. Halo Infinite would be okay competitive-wise. I think it would do fine. The multiplayer is a lot better. Again, big team battle might be a bit of an issue, but the smaller maps, the smaller arenas are pretty good. They're not like this, which is an open world game. But other than that, I'm pretty pleased with it. The only thing I would say against it, the 8 gigs of RAM is a no-go, really. It kind of puts you off. It was cheap, and again, I'm fairly confident because I've, stripped down a lot of ThinkPads and I'm used to working with laptops. So upgrading the RAM wasn't an issue for me. I also added a second. I say upgraded. I added a second SSD to a second NVMe SSD. It only came with a 512 gig one, so I added a 1 TB in the second slot. So we got 1.5 TB. So that might be a thing you have to upgrade. Taking the laptop apart is a bit of a pain. You got to remove all the screws at the back and then use a pry tool to get in under it. I did cause some minor cosmetic damage to the front of it, but I never broke any of the plastic tangs. I just scratched it a little bit. But there you go. Other than that, with 16 gigs of RAM, £25 to upgrade it. So £925 for this, under £1,000. I think it's pretty good, for an RTX 3060. Again, it's not the same as the desktop GPU, but I'm pretty pleased with it. The Ryzen 7 CPU is excellent. You get 8 cores and 16 threads with that as well. Running at 4 gigahertz, as you can see, for 4.1, it can turbo up to 40-watt TDP. So it's running pretty high, pretty close to that right now. And again, the RTX 3060 is the star of the show here. It is the full fat 130-watt RTX 3060, because you got to bear in mind that there are different models and they don't really tell you. It also has the Mux switch as well, which means it doesn't run Optimus, so it doesn't have to run the 3060 through the Radeon integrated GPU as well. It's running purely off of the RTX 3060. You can, of course, switch it so that it runs through, Lenovo call it hybrid mode. So if you want to do that, you can do that as well. The Lenovo Think Center, what was it called? I can't remember what it's called. The Lenovo thingy that you get. It's okay. You can, again, just optimize everything there that you want. You press FN and Q. All of the gameplay footage here is in maximum power mode with the battery plugged in. The battery life isn't great, but again, don't really buy a gaming laptop for its battery life. I think you get about 45 minutes out of the battery life. But yeah, so anyway, I'm quite pleased with this. It's a really decent laptop. The keyboard is nice as well. It doesn't have RGB on it, but I don't really care. It's just a backlight. But anyway, that is all for this video. So thank you for joining me, and we'll see you again soon, and goodbye.